This is the scene outside the home of Nelson Mandela tonight, where the former South African president died just a few hours ago. Mandela's death is a blow not just to South Africa, but to the entire world. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Mandela passed away today with his family by his side. He had been ill for some time after suffering a lung infection. The news was announced by the country's current president, Jacob Zuma.
What made Nelson Mandela great was precisely what made him human. We saw in him what we seek in ourselves.
Mandela was 95. He was South Africa's first black president and the country's first democratically elected president. He was a leader beloved around the world as well, and he is being remembered tonight as a visionary and a hero to all who treasure liberty and freedom. Mike Drolet has this look back at the life and legacy of Nelson Mandela.
What made Nelson Mandela great was precisely what made him human. We saw in him what we seek in ourselves.
Mandela, who is 95, was South Africa's first black president and the country's first democratically elected president. He was a leader beloved around the world, too, and he is being remembered and as a hero to all who treasure liberty and freedom. Mike Drolet has a look back at the life and legacy of Nelson Mandela.
He was a man who inspired the world from a jail cell and ultimately led a country to break down the walls of apartheid. He rose above, yet stuck to his roots. Even as president, South Africans called him by his clan name, Madiba. Indeed, Mandela led a remarkable life. Born in a small village in 1918, his tribal name was Rolihala, which means troublemaker. As a young man, he moved to Johannesburg, where he experienced the brutal racism of apartheid. That led him to join the African National Congress, but unable to change his country democratically, he formed an armed resistance. He was arrested in 1962, declared a terrorist, and given a life sentence. Most of his 27 years of captivity were spent in this small cell on Robben Island. Yet despite being allowed only 2 visitors a year, prisoner number 4664's legend and following grew. In 1990, mere months after he was released, he was invited to Canada to address a joint session of Parliament, the first foreign citizen who wasn't a head of state to do so in 40 years.
Thank you once again for helping us end our oppression.
He returned to Canada in 1998 as South Africa's first black president, a triumphant trip for the then 80-year-old. He addressed Parliament and then inspired thousands of children at Skydome.
You have made me feel like a young man again.
The love affair between Mandela and Canada was rekindled a few years later.
How are you? Don't you feel the cold?
He became an honorary Canadian citizen and then brought children to tears at the Toronto school named in his honor.
This is the time to build our nation.
His years in jail could have made him bitter, but he strove to create a unified South Africa. Hollywood immortalized an important moment in the reconciliation between blacks and whites when Mandela wore the jersey of the white captain at the 1995 World Cup. He relinquished the presidency in 1998, became an AIDS activist, and then retired from public life, saying, "Don't call me, I'll call you." In 2010, he called, making an emotional appearance at the World Cup of Soccer. Mandela lived a full life, from activist to prisoner to president, but more than anything else, a beloved symbol for freedom. Mike Drolet, Global News.
And I'm joined now by our Washington Bureau Chief Eric Sorensen. Eric, he was called the father of South Africa, but Nelson Mandela was a towering figure to the entire world, wasn't he?
Absolutely, Donna, and you have to remember that he was at one time in his young life a radical. He was considered a terrorist. That's why he was thrown in prison. And he was an extremist not just in the eyes of Afrikaners in South Africa, but among conservative leaders in the world, such as Margaret Thatcher. but it was a brutal existence. So when he finally emerged from prison and when apartheid was finally crumbling, there really could only be one person who could be the first black president of South Africa, and that was Nelson Mandela. Tonight, world leaders are reacting to the death of this great man. President Obama spoke a short time ago.
He no longer belongs to us. He belongs to the ages. Through his fierce dignity and unbending will to sacrifice his own freedom for the freedom of others, Madiba transformed South Africa and moved all of us. His journey from a prisoner to a president embodied the promise that human beings and countries can change for the better.
One of the developments that I think may be the development the most important of all has been over the past half-century or so, the struggle and the successes against the phenomenon of racial discrimination. And in this regard, there has been no more powerful symbol in the world than that of Nelson Mandela.
Tonight, families across Britain will mourn with his family and everyone in South Africa. Your greatest son has moved millions, and I believe that his inspiration for the future will be every bit as powerful as the extraordinary things that he achieved in his remarkable life.
Nelson Mandela's lasting contribution may well be the very idea of truth and reconciliation. When he came out of prison, he could have sought retribution. He finally had real power in his hands, and instead he sought the truth. He sought to reconcile. He sought to heal the races in South Africa. And for that, he probably will be remembered, and it may be what separates him from other leaders of the last century. Donna?
Eric, you know, the South African government apparently banned photos of Nelson Mandela while he was in prison. So when he got out in 1990, no one in South Africa actually knew what he looked like. Now the whole world, of course, knows and wants to say goodbye. Eric, thanks.